What is something that will be normalized in 10 years from now? Having weird embarrassing videos of yourself as a kid on the internet. It's already normal, but most people hide them or actively avoid talking about them, hoping an employer doesn't find them, hoping your parents don't see them. In 10 years these videos will be so common they'll be something we all laugh together about rather than hide them away. Parents will have them, kids will have them, give it more time and grandparents will have them. It's gonna be wild to have such high-def footage of old people when they were young. There will be so much footage, and of much better quality. It's crazy to see a picture of your grandparents and witness how they looked when they were young. Now we'll be able to see how old people acted when they were young. I just hate that I'll be one of the first old people to have that. It's frustrating seeing so many companies insisting that employees return to the office now. Working from home is simply a net good overall. Productivity apparently goes up. People are less stressed and get more sleep. It reduces traffic congestion. It lowers carbon emissions and improves air quality. It reduces the wear and tear on the roads. I'm not saying the entire economy needs to transition entirely to work from home, but even offering the flexibility to do so would have a big impact. Unfortunately, a lot of places seem eager to get back to old corporate culture, because you can't form relationships over a screen. According to some, honestly, it seems like for a lot of management types, the only joy in their lives is getting to micromanage other people's. I think we will find satellite offices the new normal, a smaller office set up somewhere near the suburbs where the employees live, rather than have hundreds of people work in a large office tower downtown, and people commuting in every day. There will be smaller offices connected by video conference and internet. People would work closer to home, less commute, less congestion, less traffic. Not everyone wants a home office. There's just something so satisfying about going into a store and picking out things from shelves. But also I took full advantage of everyone offering deliveries or contactless pickups because of the pandemic, and I probably saved a lot of money by not being able to impulse buy things as I walked by them in an aisle. I like browsing the grocery store. I don't do much normal shopping for things like clothes, household goods, etc. But I do love food shopping and checking out all the new and interesting things each week. If I just want a 12-pack of toilet paper and some Triscuits, sure, I guess I can get that delivered. I just don't see the value in the markup most of the time too, plus tip, etc. Absolutely agreed on this. It was already pretty much normalized for the mobile gaming industry in Japan, with how many of their JRPGs have a gacha mechanic as the core, secondary mechanic to unlock units. As a player of those games, I hate but live with the mechanic, but sometimes am scared of how accepted it is. A lot of online multiplayer PC plus console games have been adding in loot boxes or something similar like Overwatch, Apex Legends, Smite, to name a few, and I think it'll only increase. Microtransactions have been a plague on the industry and have sadly been pretty normalized already. I remember when Bethesda was near universally torched for $3 Horse Armor DLC. Now people will actively defend a game selling a single shade of blue dye for $6. I've seen a thread on an Steam forum for an early access game that was about how excited the poster was to get the cosmetic cash shop into the game. There are certainly some games that could not have existed without them, but in the grand scheme of things, microtransactions as a whole have been complete net negative for gaming. I only expect it to get worse, sadly, as we will now have an entire generation of people for who it's just normal. I'm hoping a stronger focus on mental health. I think we're close, but there's still a stigma with therapy and other mental health treatments. My wife just graduated as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. The amount of people who self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, activities, etc. is staggering when you consider how we all have issues. I grew up in a house where you just deal with it or swallow it. I spoke with someone the other day who truly benefits from therapy, but her final statement was, "But it's so expensive." I came to Germany and was shocked to see that, from my experience and perspective, Doctors don't care about mental health. I was suffering a lot after giving birth to my child and doctor just said yeah, drink a chamomile tea, rest and take a walk outside, catch some sun. Other doctors mentioned catching some sun and taking vitamins and tea to cure depression and intrusive thoughts. I asked paracetamol and they gave me a herbal drop instead, homeopathy, because if I have an excruciating headache, I just need tea and chill out. I had to choose a topic to research for a project and so I choose mental health stigmas. Did a fuck ton of research on this stuff and I can say that it has gotten infinitely better from as long ago as 1980-1990. However, there is of course still much room for improvement. I came across a few different solutions to help this, but the main one I remember is teaching CBT techniques in school. In LA, it's quite normal, even more so for people of color. It's a cultural thing more than race. My parents insisted I just live with them. They said, why pay some random to make him rich and not be able to save money yourself? Contribute to the household instead, which is far cheaper. It worked, and I was able to pay off all my student debt, pay off my car, credit cards, and save up enough money for the down payment on my house. Bought a vacant piece of land in the desert, and now saved up enough money for a down payment on a second home. Couldn't have done that without my parents. Most of my Latino, Black friends still lived with their parents, although they didn't take advantage of it like I did. They instead went on various vacations around the world, copious amounts of trips to Vegas, etc. I have to say, I am a little jealous of all the traveling they have done compared to me. I don't want to wait until I'm old/retired to enjoy traveling, and it feels more like a burden. I wanna be able to hike, drink till 3 a.m., etc. But at least I have a house now and not crippling debt, besides this damn mortgage. Families living together is so awesome if it works. My wife and I have a much larger than needed house. My mother-in-law, brother-in-law and nephew currently lived with us for whatever reasons. We've talked and the house is plenty big enough for everyone to have their own space. The expenses are fairly low due to 4 adults contributing, which means we can work less, do more and enjoy more time with friends and family. I'm often told our family situation is amazing and they wish they had that. I understand that's not always easy though with some families. Nope. This is definitely not the future for America. In order for elderly people to get Medicaid, you pretty much have to give up everything you own or give up everything you own anyways due to extremely high healthcare costs. This is happening to my family now. My grandmother has to move into an assisted living home because she isn't able to stay at her house anymore. We wanted to keep the house in the family, but apparently you aren't allowed to gift the house to one of your children if you are trying to get on Medicaid. They have to buy it at market value, but for us it's unaffordable because the market value now is about $300,000, but it needs over $100,000 worth of work. So my mom and her siblings are trying to sell everything and the house in order for her to be approved for Medicaid. High healthcare costs are destroying the generational wealth in this country for middle to lower income people. Edit, switched Medicare for Medicaid. Sorry, I mixed them up. Just moved into a purpose-built multi-family/generational house with my wife and my 72-year-old mom. We were extremely lucky that my mom was willing to share her equity with us, as it was the only way we'd ever be able to afford to live in the area we moved to, in the greater Boston area. Many friends are like, oh, that's interesting, aka, you're nuts, when in reality, multi-generational living is a pretty normal thing in most parts of the world, just not as common in the United States. Oh, that's gonna suck for the siblings that didn't get the house. I'm expecting my parents to pass down their gorgeous 2,000 square per foot home in a nice neighborhood to my brother, simply because he's the biggest deadbeat. He's 32 and still lives with them. The other 3 of us busted our asses to build careers and save up down payments for our homes. I'm not bitter. Yeah, blending online shopping and VR is going to take over one day. Imagine people who can ''t/don't want to drive, Older people, anybody who wants to go shopping but can't. You can put a headset on, still walk around a store for hours and get that stimulation some people need. Maybe bump into other virtual shoppers and chit-chat. This social interaction is extremely important the older you get for mental strength into older age. It's just an overall net positive I feel. Instead of looking at 2D items on Amazon, which was cool for the first 10-20 years. Being legally allowed to marry as a disabled American. Right now, certain types of disability benefits get revoked if you marry, forcing disabled people to make the choice between marrying and access to healthcare or the basic payments that let them survive. In some states you're even not allowed to live in the same household as your partner, because it's a common law marriage. Pretty much every time I bring up the fact that I can't marry, it's met with the I didn't know that shrug, and it makes me want to bang my head against a wall forever. There's currently a SIP bill that may get passed, which removes the marriage penalty in some circumstances but not all. Maybe in 10 years I'll be able to marry. It'd be nice. This is insane. I had no idea. I'm so sorry that you've been so egregiously failed by the system. Is there anything people can do to help? Anybody that we could try voting into any level of office that also cares about this issue? This just seems like an incredible oversight by our government, and it's something we should all be aware of if and when our ability to vote it into reality comes along. I feel this so much. I'm not able to get married because I'll lose my health insurance that I get because I am disabled. It would cost $5,000 per year plus CO pays and who knows what else to marry my partner. One of my treatments is $55k USD every 4 weeks, which is crazy enough as it is. I ended up changing my last name legally and refer to him as my husband, but every now and then I have to explain and it hurts. Where I live, the average house price just went over £500,000. Average rent is £1,300 per month for a one-bedroom apartment with no car parking space or outside area. Just get your head down and save up for a year for a mortgage, like we did say the older generation lol. I live on a very small island. A lot of people will have to move away to be able to afford just to live, but that will be moving country, not just moving elsewhere in the country they grew up in. Fuck, I still need to really come to terms with the fact that I will never own a home. It's genuinely making me almost cry, but I rather have a job I enjoy than one that takes all my time away but pays well. But in general, the housing market is fucking expensive. It's impossible to own a house usually unless you're married, which I am of course not. And even then it varies on the income of both parties. My parents bought a house in younger years, with jobs paying pretty much half of what I currently make, and I don't see any chance of them giving me this house, even though they definitely are going to move away in a few years. Rather than build apartments, developers will build 15-story parking structures. Each parking spot will come with power so you can live in your shitty electric van or your own Xbox tiny house. This will become the new, modern variation of trailer parks. The parking spots will still cost 2/3 RDS of your income. If your van doesn't have a toilet and shower, there's a public toilet and shower on level 1 that costs $10 per 15 minutes. Everyone who lives in these places will work 6-gig economy jobs and have a master's degree. And everything will be on a subscription model. The van, the space, the server needed to start the van, charge the van, locate the van so anything external connected to the van works, which will be everything too, and also your sneakers, your underwear, the self-cleaning cloth you use to dry your tears of sadness and anger will need a subscription. Vertical farming. The weather will stop being reliable enough for outdoor farming, and farmers are going to have to start investing in vertical farms to get the necessary output. This is going to put a ton of farms out of business, but the weather was already going to do that anyway. Edit. For those who are saying this is some kind of science fiction silliness, I don't consider it a pipe dream at all. It is a nightmare, as climate change ravages our ability to naturally grow our multitude of crops that we currently can grow. Our selection of growable crops will narrow. Companies will genetically modify crops to withstand harsher and harsher weather, hopefully not at the expense of their yield, but it's hard to say if they will be able to keep up. I am not trying to say that we will just recreate what we currently have in vertical growing towers. It will be more that we need to move toward it as a necessary development to handle the increasingly chaotic weather patterns, and our diets will eventually become a lot more simple as a way to keep the world's population fed. This post makes me realize that people do not understand time horizons or economics. Redoing the agricultural industry would cost hundreds of billions, and they're not profitable enough to undergo drastic changes. This type of technology is possible, but you have to understand it will not be widespread for decades. I mean, most likely not in our lifetimes. Unlikely. This is model software as a service is here to stay. Banks love it because it provides strong visibility into future earnings. It's an easy revenue stream to lend on. Companies love it because subscription revenue has a whole ton of key performance indicators that are way easier to track and forecast. Also, the license fee for something like Netflix would be damn expensive to replicate a comparable lifetime value. If the average tenure of a customer is like 5 years, the one-time license for Netflix would need to be greater than $500 to get the same gross dollar revenue. I don't know. It really hasn't become half as popular as I thought yet. Very, very few people own one, and it seems like they use it for hobby, not to print practical things like a replacement doorknob for that specific model of cupboard you have. Edit. I forgot to mention one thing. Most people do not have the technology literacy ability to learn to use one. I work in a place where we have public computers, and we routinely help people who struggle to navigate the web, log in their emails, download attachments, etc. The digital divide is still wide. Number. I'm deep into 3D printing and I don't see it. They would need to be a lot simpler to use than they are now. It's still very much a hobby dominated by people willing to tinker with moving parts, slicer settings, learning some material science type stuff. We would need to reach a point where using a 3D printer is just plug and play, and yeah, that's a ways off. Even an out-of-the-box 3D printer requires you to understand a bunch of things the average Joe is not going to want to learn. Just visit any 3D printing forum and look at the number of frustrated newbies who dove into the hobby without doing research and realizing how much work it actually is. This is more or less an inevitability once it is cheaper than raising animals. Now you don't have to grow guts, bones, skin, eyes, etc. to get your meat. Cutting out so many middlemen. You also have to do less stuff when it comes to fueling the process. No more tractor fuel, no more feeding an animal, no more putting cheese into fucking everything just because, no more transporting live animals, no more getting your hand crushed milking, no more land waste. You'll still need electricity, but a net reduction in input and energy required. Came here to say the same. I'm in the USA and I'm in a state that does not have marijuana legalized in any way. It just feels so fucking silly going through the process of meeting up with my guy I get it from and having to sneak around like that, even though an increasing hash of states has it totally legalized and are generating tax revenue and jobs like crazy. I gotta think by 10 years from now it will be different. Had to put my 13-year-old dog down a couple of weeks ago, which got me thinking that when our pets suffer, we're heavily judged if we don't end their pain. But my grandmother, who is ready to go, has stopped taking her medications and doesn't want to eat or drink and is making herself more miserable to go. This is a woman who knows what is happening and wants it to happen, but we have to watch her put herself through this. It's an interesting system we have. Valid point. Even though I don't like what you're saying, but for crying out loud, they have temperatures of about 49 degrees Celsius in Canada right now. The maximum I've ever experienced were 45 degrees in Dubai in August, and that was pretty uncomfortable. However, in Dubai, AC is available everywhere, even in the little shelters where you wait for the bus. In Canada, it is not. Unlikely, I think. There have already been some court cases saying you have to have a payment option for people who don't have or can't get approval for a credit card. I know in NYC a couple of years back there were a bunch of restaurants and street vendors only taking credit cards or digital transactions, and the city said they had to take cash cause not doing so discriminated against homeless and others who don't have a cell phone or credit card.